In the last episode, we looked at performance risk and contract execution. Why getting paid depends on more than buyer credit. That leads directly to the next practical moment. The invoice is now overdue. Maybe the buyer is slow. Maybe there's a dispute. Maybe the internal follow-up has drifted. Maybe the exporter has insurance, financing, or collection options, but is not sure when to involve them. In this episode, we will look at overdue export receivables, how exporters can think about escalation, collections, claim timing, and protecting the relationship while still protecting cash. The first question is simple, but important. Is this a slow payment problem, or is it a dispute problem? A buyer who says the wire is coming next week is different from a buyer who says the goods were late, incomplete, damaged, or not accepted. Both situations need follow-up, but they are not the same risk. Before the exporter escalates, calls a collector, talks to a lender, or assumes an insurance path is available, the team should understand what the buyer is actually saying and whether the receivable is clean or contested. That means the transaction file matters immediately. The exporter should be able to assemble the invoice, purchase order, or contract, delivery documents, acceptance evidence, correspondence, payment reminders, and any dispute history. The file does not need to be theatrical. It needs to be organized, current, and useful. If the buyer later changes the story, if a lender asks about eligibility, if a carrier asks for claim support, or if counsel or collections becomes involved, the exporter should not be rebuilding the facts from scattered inbox threads. Escalation should also be deliberate. Many exporters start with friendly reminders, then move to sales follow-up, then credit or finance outreach, then senior contact, then formal demand, collection support, or legal counsel. The right sequence depends on the relationship, the amount, the country, the buyer, and the agreements involved. The key is to avoid two extremes, waiting passively until leverage fades or escalating so aggressively that a recoverable relationship turns into a larger dispute. Escalation is a control process, not a mood. Insurance and financing add another layer. Trade credit insurance policies can include notice, waiting period, collection, documentation, and claim timing requirements. Lenders may also care if a receivable is overdue, disputed, concentrated, assigned, insured, or excluded from the borrowing base. This episode is not policy advice, and it is not a substitute for reading the facility or insurance documents. The practical point is that overdue receivables can trigger timing questions. Exporters should know who needs to be notified, what must be documented, and what deadlines may apply. There is also a relationship question. The buyer may be important. The delay may be temporary. The sales team may want to preserve goodwill. That can be valid, but relationship protection should not mean losing control of the receivable. Exporters can communicate professionally, leave room for a commercial solution, and still keep written records, deadlines, ownership, and escalation options clear. Protecting the relationship and protecting cash are not always opposites. The discipline is knowing when patience is strategic and when delay is just drift. Internal ownership is where many overdue receivables break down. Sales may own the relationship, finance may own collections, credit may own limits and policy compliance. Logistics may own delivery evidence, legal or outside counsel may own demand strategy. If nobody owns the next step, the invoice ages quietly. A simple cadence helps: one owner, one current status, one next action, one due date, and a clear trigger for when the issue moves from routine follow-up to controlled escalation. A useful overdue receivable review asks a few practical questions. Is the buyer communicating? Is the invoice disputed? Is the transaction file complete? Have all promised payment dates been recorded? Are insurance or lender notice requirements relevant? Has the right person inside the buyer organization been contacted? What is the next escalation point if payment does not arrive? And at what point does the exporter stop treating the delay as ordinary and start treating it as a managed recovery issue? The takeaway is straightforward. An overdue export invoice should not drift through informal reminders. It should move through a controlled process, confirm whether the receivable is clean or disputed, organize the file, manage communication, respect policy or financing timing where applicable, and escalate with purpose. Impello helps exporters think through these structures with their insurance, finance, legal, and commercial teams. In the next episode, we will zoom out to country and transfer risk. What happens when the buyer may want to pay, but the market, currency, or government environment changes the risk? If this was helpful, like the video, leave a comment with the trade finance questions you want us to break down next, and follow Impello Global for more practical export credit and receivables guidance.